All right, what are the three keys for South Carolina beating LSU in Death Valley Saturday night? It might not be as difficult as you think. I'm feeling more and more confident, and we talk with several people behind enemy lines about what LSU's play is against South Carolina, both offensively and defensively. We're joined by a very special guest, Gordy Rush, the on-field reporter for LSU as well. And I tell you my score prediction, and we get into a flurry of shows to close the week. Locked on Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. I hope everyone's having a fantastic week. We got a great show for you today. I want to say thank you to everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Now, a couple things pretty excited about. One, got the background. Apparently, this is a very, very bad frame because you can see everything on the computer screen. But we got that. We got a South Carolina piece being added today. We got 3 shows coming in the next day and a half, basically. Had to push one back because we have some very special guests. We got Mike Breton. We got a crossover show with Matt Moscona, and we got a lot of stuff coming. First and foremost, we have Gordy Rush coming on the show, former LSU player and someone that also did works on field during the broadcast live from the game. So it's also my boss. Everyone play it cool. But we're going to start this show there and then talk about the 3 keys for South Carolina beating LSU on Saturday. Let's bring in Gordy Rush right now. All right, everyone. I've warned everybody already. This is my boss. Everyone play it cool. But very happy to be joined by Gordy Rush. One, how are you doing today? And 2, are you excited about Saturday?
Yeah, I like the South Carolina matchup, right? And unbelievable experience in Columbia. That was my second time to Columbia last year. Obviously, it was an epic game that LSU was lucky to get out of there with a win. Friends with Todd Ellis and go back with that. So I enjoy the rivalry. Got a chance to meet Shane Beamer after he beat Clemson the first time. LSU was playing in the SEC championship, Brian Kelly's first year.
Right.
And so it was really cool. Beamer was on the field with his son, and so giving him a high five after he beat Clemson. So I'm pulling for Shane Beamer, just not this week.
Yeah, I hear you. Right. I always say South Carolina fans, you might recognize Gordy because he was the one under the goalpost when that field goal just barely missed, just given the fist pump. But kind of going behind enemy lines, we've talked a bunch about this in this matchup this week. Like I think the path to success for South Carolina is a little bit different than LSU's. It's probably a little bit more limited if we're being honest. But LSU feels like they really want to establish the run game, almost just to prove a point. I feel like. What do you think offensively to start is their quickest path to success? Is it the run game, or is it trying to get more explosives downfield in the passing game?
Look, I think there are a couple of issues. I think first and foremost, what everybody has done to LSU is the opposite of what they did a year ago. Mm-hmm. A lot of people brought numbers up to the box. They blitzed and got after Garrett Nussmeier, knowing he was more of a stationary, quarterback. And offensive line struggled with a little pass protection early, and then LSU didn't have a whole lot of speed at wide receiver, and so they were unable to stretch other defenses. They fixed that last year. They went and hit some people in the transfer portal and have great receiving core. I mean, 1 through 8, I would put LSU up there with probably in the top 5 receiving groups in the country. I mean, they're really outstanding. And I was surprised when Clemson came out and only put 3 or 4 on the line of scrimmage and dropped 7. And everybody has copied and pasted that. And Ole Miss took it a step further, and they just put 3 men on the line of scrimmage. Yeah. And what happened is that LSU has not been committed to the run. And the times that they've tried to run to smaller numbers, they haven't had a whole lot of success against Ole Miss. They were without Caden Durham. A running back slipped. There was a blown assignment. And there just has not been a commitment to run. I don't think LSU is going to lead the SEC in rushing this year, but they've got to be able to run the football for 100 yards or so per game right? To have success in this league, you've got to run that. And 2 weeks ago against Ole Miss, that was the worst rushing defense in the conference by 30 yards. And LSU ran for 50 yards. And what happened? LSU couldn't hold the time of possession. Ole Miss has kept LSU's defense on the field for 50 plays. And more importantly, it took 2 hours for those 50 plays because there were so many penalties and so many lovely commercials on ABC and everything else. And they wore LSU's defense down. So, I mean, that's what LSU has to take advantage of, running the football when the numbers indicate they should run.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I really, you just gave me a little bit of PTSD from having to watch that game. I forgot we're sitting here at the house with the game on one screen, and then we have like another TV that my fiance has allowed me to bring into the living room on game days, which is a great setup. And like whatever game was also on at 3:30 was like at halftime with maybe 11 minutes to go in that Ole Miss LSU game. There were so many. It was such a clunky first half. I think the thing that surprised me most about the lack of commitment to the run game in that LSU Ole Miss game was that in the first half, you only had 3 total carries to a running back. And that was very shocking with what the numbers you brought up. Kind of looking at the other side for South Carolina, and you obviously played at LSU and you know ball really well. If you're looking at this team, and I want to say outside of Sellers because it's the easiest answer and probably the most correct answer, for being honest, but what worries you the most about having to play them on Saturday?
Well, big play potential, right? I mean, Sellers has a capability of making big plays, and LSU with under Blake Baker is their attacking scheme, high risk, high reward sort of thing, and it's trying not to give up those explosive plays. And South Carolina, obviously they've had their struggles on offense, but they have big play guys, and so that means containing Sellers and keeping him in a box. Nyck Harbor, speed, size, what a premier matchup, right? I'm sure that Shula is going to not put him on Mansour Delane. Everybody's thrown away from the Virginia Tech transfer for LSU. And you saw Ole Miss last weekend. What did they do well? They won some man-to-man matchups on the other side, right, against Pickett and some of the other corners in Woodland. They won it with those guys, even though PJ got one. Yeah, I think that's the thing. South Carolina, they've struggled, I think, to really move the ball. Certainly they did at Missouri. Just have some consistency. It was the big plays that they had against Missouri. And I think for LSU, you don't want to get in the situation where you get into a track meet and they're able to hit a bunch of big plays.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Just from a competence standpoint, I feel like both of these teams were so highly touted going into the season. Both quarterbacks, obviously, very highly touted going into the season. There's still a lot of season left. I keep trying to bring this up to South Carolina fans who feel like the sky is falling. As you know, I mean, living here in Baton Rouge, people warned me that after a loss, the sky would feel like it's falling. I was shocked at how quickly it felt like that for both fan bases.
I mean, I spent all August and I go around speaking to different businesses, and I'm like, look, this is the new world of SEC with this rev share, right? There's no great teams, and there's no bad teams. Vanderbilt has $18 million to spend on football. Their quarterbacks from New Mexico State, their tight ends from New Mexico State. They got a DB from Tennessee. Vanderbilt, to live in Nashville and get that degree and play in the SEC is an easy sell. And there's no more 12-0s. Yeah. And the problem is that you've got a place like here at LSU, they're expecting to be in the college football playoff, 2 out of every 3 years? Yep. And that's another 9-10 programs. South Carolina obviously is at that point. They expect to be, make appearances in that as well. And somebody's got to lose in this. Right. Somebody's got to lose. And just these fan bases are not used to doing that. So, yeah, it is it's a pivotal game. And I've seen South Carolina's schedule. I mean, it's brutal the next 5. And LSU's still got trips to Vandy, to Bama, to Oklahoma. Texas A&M comes here. Nobody's got an easy path. So every week's a war, right? And all you can do, and I've seen all the, everybody with Murderers Row. Everybody's got Murderers Row. And all you can worry about is this week. And, this is, in this day and age, I keep going back to nobody's great and nobody's bad. I think home field advantage is that much more important with everybody stored in that spot.
I think it's funny, too, that kind of viral thing came out. Like Orlovsky was talking about it. Josh Pate was talking about it. Like I had been talking about it for months. I feel like it's like, hey, here's this stretch that South Carolina has to go to, and everyone was like, finally, like, oh my gosh, that's impossible. And then you kind of see this like hand raised from all these other like SEC programs, like, guys, we do the same thing in like October, November. So, all right, 1.5 more questions. One's important.
No, go ahead.
But first one. Give me a bold prediction. I'm not going to ask you for prediction because I feel like I know where you're going to lean, and fairly so. But I think when you talk about Saturday night, give me one bold prediction you think happens on either side of the ball.
Well, I don't know how bold you want me to be. I've seen enough film on South Carolina. I'm interested to see what Mike Shula does in his preparation, because I think you mentioned it. It was in this building, and Hunt Palmer said it. Sellers is holding on to the football too long, and he has too many. They're taking too many negative plays.
Yeah,
and I'm here to tell you, South Carolina hadn't faced a defense like LSU.
Right.
I mean, this is a top 5 defense, and I don't know how you fix that. Right? I don't know how you fix that. So I don't know how bold you want me to be, but on paper in the X's and O's matchup, this sets up really good for this LSU defense at home. Against Tiger Stadium. On the flip side, the matchup that I think that is for me is, obviously what is Garrett Nussmeier's health? Without getting into all that speculation, I tell people, I like to keep my job right as a sideline reporter, but the film don't lie. Yeah. The film don't lie. And twice, I've been around Garrett Nussmeier for 5 years now. He had a free play in which Ole Miss jumped off sides and had a streak in Chris Hilton. He couldn't get him the football, right? So what's his health? But, I mean, for me, it's Stewart, the outstanding pass rusher for South Carolina. And, is LSU offensive line-wise, is it scheme or whatever it is? But they've had 5 and 6 people, and they've struggled to block 3 and 4. And so what happens – with that whole matchup? South Carolina does not. They're going to look at the film and say, we're not changing anything from what Florida and Ole Miss did, right? And you got to feel like Thomas and Stewart, as effective as they've been rushing the passer, I don't need to bring more than 4. And so that becomes that bold protection. I mean, Stewart arguably, and Brian Kelly has said it, he may be as good as it gets that LSU is going to face this year. And what does LSU do to handle him and keep Garrett Nussmeier upright?
Yeah. All right, last question, most important one, I think, and to our listeners especially. Yeah. A lot of people coming to travel this weekend. I love Baton Rouge. It's been awesome moving here so far. And I keep bragging about it, some of the people reaching out about where to go. Give me 3 to 5 spots for our listeners to check out while they're in Baton Rouge.
Well, you got to go to Chime Street. It's a good, for me, Chimes is always an important place, right? To try the alligator, right? On game day, and they have a big roof, and you can walk to that. I'm always going to be partial to Ruffino's. That was my best friend, former Tiger Ruffin Rodrigue. It's an Italian restaurant that's always a great Friday night spot that's happening. You can't go wrong with that. Phil's Oyster Bar has a ton of LSU memorabilia, right? And then I think, for me, I think always seeing, I love the traditions, right? And saw the trains and the cabooses at Columbia last year. I think just the walk down Victory Hill is pretty cool. And I think that's, whether it's the Grove or all those things, if I'm traveling to other places, I want to see the cool things. And so those are my recommendations.
All right. I appreciate it, Gordy. I'll see you in the office like 2 hours from now, probably.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Thanks, Gordy. All right. That was Gordy Rush. We appreciate him stopping by. That was great. A lot of good insight and a lot of good stuff. And I think a lot of good points to be made from where this team has to go in terms of where they're going to find success, really on both sides of the ball. So we're going to be back. We're going to pay some bills and go through some ads real quick. And we'll be right back with more Locked On Gamecocks. All right, we're back. Great having Gordy on. Really insightful stuff, and a guy that I look up to and has been awesome for me in my job in general. So I want to say thank you for that. Before we move on, I want to give a quick shout out to a couple of our sponsors. You guys know we got to pay some bills, and we love to do it, especially with our friends at Supply House when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, right? A new repair. Get your career moving forward with Supply House. Order today, and if you do, you see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000. That's right, 280,000 HVAC, plumbing, electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Join the free Trademaster program today and score some serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Let's also acknowledge some of our friends over there at FanDuel. Listen, the NFL season is here. I am so pumped. We are ready to get back to our winning ways this weekend. And FanDuel is an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I'll tell you what, I personally love with FanDuel the ability to parlay things, the ability to get live betting all at your fingertips, the most up-to-date, up-to-the-minute, up-to-the-play type of odds that you can imagine, whether it be an over-under, a player prop, or if it's even just something as simple as the spread itself. You can do all of that at your fingertips at FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app today, and get started. Let's get back to the show. I thought Gordy made some interesting points. Man, this thing is really – this isn't going to help the audio crowd, but this thing, we finally got some pictures on the wall. We got another one coming over here in a minute. I got to go up to Walmart to go pick up a frame for that. I guess I got to get one that does not just show all of your business with a glare from the computer screen. I'll figure out how to fix it. I'm sure you guys will tell me how to fix it in the comments, and I appreciate you guys always. Let's get into 3 keys to victory here. Now, what Gordy said at the end was frustrating strictly because he's right. And it's something I haven't talked enough about on this week's show. So let's get into it now. This is a legit defensive unit. Like this is he said top 5. I think that's a very fair assessment of what they are in terms of a defensive unit. Now, people have kind of lost sight of that because of what happened at Ole Miss. But if we're being honest, Ole Miss usually does that to everybody, right? Like Lane Kiffin and that offense, Charlie Weiss Jr., they kind of do that to everybody. And here's the thing I keep going back to. You think about like the teams that have held Ole Miss to that few points. I can think of when Georgia held them to like 14 or 13, I want to say a couple of years back in Athens. And Nick Saban was able to hold them around 21 at times, maybe 24. But holding them to 24 points, if you hold Ole Miss to 24 points, you feel like you should be in contention to win with an offense like you have at Ole Miss. Now, last year, South Carolina lost them 27-3. That was a much different story. But the point that remains is LSU's defense is a top 5 defense. I don't think it's necessarily even that debatable. I'll press this down here. It's even that debatable. I think that South Carolina is going to have their hands full. Now, you're talking about an injury report that came out last night, right? Let's go over this. An injury report that came up last night, and it involved how many total players was it from South Carolina? I don't think it was that many, but it's where the positions that you have them. Judge Collier is on I think the doubtful list. Let's see here. Let me pull this up. This is great radio. The main point I'm trying to make is you are most likely going to be down 3 offensive linemen. Okay. Out, Marquis Anderson. Doubtful, Nolan Hay, Kason Henry. Questionable, Miles Norwood, Judge Collier, Troy Pikes. Man, you only have 6 names on that list. 4 of them are pretty massive, and that's not even including Judge Collier. I throw in Troy Pikes there as well just because you're already not super deep at that position. Being out 3 offensive linemen on the road in Death Valley is not a recipe for success for anyone. Here's what I'll say once again. It's not like the offensive line has already been great. Now, Kason Henry has been, from a PFF standpoint, I don't want to say statistically, but you guys know what I'm trying to say. PFF standpoint, he has been the best offensive lineman on this team. So that's a frustrating loss if he's not able to go. Even if he's able to go, you're going to have your hands full. Like LSU is out Gabe Relaford for the season. He's a defensive end. It was really good. Paul Mubanga, the offensive lineman for them, He is doubtful. And then you have questionable Aaron Anderson, and we'll get into that in a second. Caden Durham is back to probable. Ahmad Bro, defensive lineman, is back to probable as well. But again, I go back to this. One of the things that we all know LSU did in the offseason was spend a ton of money in the portal, as you do now. And they went out and got Patrick Payton from Florida State, former 5-star kid, I believe. Jack Pyburn from Florida, who's been really, really good. And they already have some really good edge rushers in general. That defensive line going up against this South Carolina offense, we say this every week. And it doesn't usually come true. But we say this every week. The key to victory here, you have got to stay out of your own way, and you have got to figure out how to figure out a way to not constantly be behind the chains. It's an unwinnable game if you are doing what you did against Missouri. It was unwinnable then. But going into a game like this, in this environment, against a fan base that is desperate for a win, it feels like, I don't say desperate, that probably is a little bit much, but really, really needs a win against a coaching staff that really, really needs a win. I don't think you're going to see LSU, come out with like some sort of like us against the world, backs against the wall. We're throwing everything in the, with the kitchen sink out there offensively, defensively, because we have to get this win. It's a long season, right? I don't think you're going to see that. I do think you're going to see them play with a lot more sense of urgency than you have maybe in other weeks. And I think that from a defensive versus offensive standpoint, Sellers is awesome. But let's not make any mistakes, because I've seen a lot of this on social media, and I agree with it. I think I've retweeted almost everyone that's come across my timeline. But the idea that LSU would have lost this game a year ago if Sellers played the full game, I think is correct. I think if Sellers doesn't go out, they win that game. But last year's LSU defense is not this year's LSU defense. There are stars everywhere. One of the keys right here, who's going to be wide receiver number 2? Vandravius Jacobs, if he goes up against Monster Delane, this is not a shot at Jacobs. Jacobs has been awesome. He's been awesome, especially as a deep threat. Monster Delane has pretty much shut down that side of the field the whole season. Is it time for Nyck Harbor to step up? Is it time for Rowe? Is it time for one of the freshmen? Is it time for somebody else that's going to get – do we finally see a Mazio Bennett breakout game? Someone's going to have to do it. I promise you this. The names on the paper and the roster that like offensively at least, Sellers could be the guy, but it's not going to be, hey, South Carolina went in and Vandravius Jacobs had 200 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns, and they lit their ass up. The name on the paper that in the box score on late Saturday night, Sunday morning, that will have won you this game if you're able to win it, is not one we're necessarily at the forefront of our minds that we're thinking of. It's got to be a Mazio Bennett. It's got to be an Oscar Attaway. It's got to be a Russell Faison. Like, someone that has not had a ton of success yet is going to have a breakout game to win this game. Offensively, that I feel very confident in that, because that's how good this LSU defense is. Now, the other thing that he brought up that I thought was really interesting is, man, Dylan Stewart can have a game. This has been as bad as the offensive line for South Carolina has been. The LSU offensive line hasn't been much better. Now, they're going to be banged up with Paul Mabanga possibly out at guard, which means Carius Kern, a former 5-star, might come in and be your left guard for them. I think these edge rushers could have a field day on Saturday. I really do. But what we need more than anything out of the edge rushers is to have something different than what we had in Como against Missouri, which is you got to be able to stop the run. If you got to set the edge, and stop the run. Like, you have got to figure out a way to keep your man engaged and then still make a tackle and get off the block. Like that is I think that going to a 3-man front, like Clayton White's a great defensive coordinator, knows a lot more about football than me. We've seen what's worked in the games leading up to this against LSU with Ole Miss. We saw it against Florida, really, and those are really good defensive-minded coaches on those staffs, and Florida has one of the best defensive front fours in the country. I love these edge rushers from South Carolina. I think the linebackers have been playing much better. You got to make sure you are seeing your keys, reading the right things, not getting caught up in any window dressing. I mean, they're going to do some things. They're going to go out there 4 wide, and I'm telling you right now, even with 4 or 3 receivers, they are going to try and establish the run because they feel like they have to for their identity. And that's fine, but you got to figure out a way to stop it, because the strength of this offense still for a second straight year for LSU is going to be in the passing game. If you can get in the backfield, knock Nuss around early, and maybe get him some little happy feet because of how, he's clearly not 100%. That would be huge. So staying ahead of the chains, that's a huge key. Stopping the run and making them one-dimensional on offense, because they are one-dimensional, that's 2. And then third key, the third and possibly most important key of the entire game. We'll talk about it when we get back. Before we go to break, real quick, do you want to give a shout-out to another great friend of ours, and that is Mazda. Mazda. Move forward, guys. Move forward. We do it each and every week. I'll tell you what, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply just move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. So does Mazda. They bring the same intention on how every single craft of every single model of every single car is made. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. I tell you what, like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move or be moved. And last but not least, our friends at Quo. Let's see here. One of the tools that help make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly OpenPhone. And you guys heard me talk about them. If you are a business owner, you are not going to want to miss this. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. Here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying 2 phones like Kevin Gates or relying on a landline. Really good Kevin Gates reference there, guys. None of that when you have Quo in your back pocket. See why Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications, works right through an app on your phone or computer, and so there's no more carrying 2 phones or relying on a landline. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly OpenPhone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com. Locked on College. That's QUO.com/LockedOnCollege. And if you've got an existing number with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. We'll be right back with our final segment on Locked On Gamecocks today. All right, third and final key to winning. And before we get into that, I also want to give a quick touch base on a quick thing in regards to the Michael Smith transfer. Beamer brought it up on the coaches teleconference on Wednesday. One of the things he brought up about it was, listen, he and Michael Smith had a conversation last week before, I think it was during the bye week, just about what his role in the team is. And the comment that was made from Beamer was, practice matters. Like practice matters. Maybe it was after Kentucky, but and before the bye week. But he said, practice matters. What you do in practice matters in terms of getting on the field. And that was all he said. He said, I'm going to leave it at that and leave it between me and Michael and go from there. But he gave him the weekend to think about it. He got a text back from Smith saying, I'm going to go in a different direction. He hopes he does well at the new school and flourishes wherever that opportunity may be. I'm sure, knowing Beamer and how they run this program, they will figure out a way to make sure he's able to get every resource he needs to go somewhere else. Hopefully, like we said, it's just not at a school that can come back to haunt you, because I think that kid can still be great. Hate that it won't be in Columbia, but we obviously wish him the best in where he's going. All right, 3 keys. Like I said, got to stay ahead of the chains. I'm not even going to give you the one I give you every week, guys, of turnovers. I don't think – I'm at the point with South Carolina's offensive line where I think sacks are going to happen. You just have to make sure you're able to figure out a way to consistently be ahead of that. And like, if you're going to give up a sack, it cannot be backbreaking. It cannot be one of these things where you're in like Sacks are going to happen with this team. It can't happen when you're first and goal from the 1, and then all of a sudden you're at the 17. It can't happen when you're in field goal range. All of a sudden you're out of field goal range. The sacks are going to happen as we have seen for the last 3 years. Fine. We want you to get better. We hope the offensive line does get better. Or at some point, I'm sure it will. But as of right now, this is where we are. And this is, I think, it's a fair assumption that it's not going to just stop overnight. That being said, if you're going to be taking sacks, it cannot be on first and goal from the 1. It cannot be in a situation where you are potentially getting a strip sack, and it cannot be in situations where you're going to be taking yourselves out of potential scoring opportunities or moving the ball forward on a first down in their territory. What I mean by that part is like, listen, if it's 3rd and 3 and you're on the 38 and you have 2 downs to possibly get a first, you cannot make it 3rd and 15. You know what I mean? So those situations, you have to avoid them. The last key to victory here is wide receiver 2. It's wide receiver 2. This is a very good secondary. It's a really good linebacking core. They get after it. Defensive line is good. This is a very, very good defense. The safeties on this team with Marcus Cooley and AJ Halsey are really good. But I think that Jacobs is going to go up against Monster Delane for most of the game. I hope they put Harbor on. I hope they put him on Harbor. And I'm not saying that in a bad way to Harbor, because Harbor can still get past anybody in the country with how fast he is. But that would also leave, I think, some opportunities for Vanjarius Jacobs. You're going to see quarterbacks that are going to shy away from that side of the field because of how good he's been. He's been arguably the best quarterback in the country. Who's going to step up? I think it's Mazio Bennett moment. I think it could be a Rowe moment. I think it could be whoever, if it's Harbor or Jacobs, the inverse of that guy, whichever one is not being guarded by Delane. I think you have a breakout game. I think that's a huge, huge key to victory is whoever wide receiver 2 is has a great game. I'll give you one more just for good measure. RB1, got to have a good game. Got to have a good game. And I don't mean you need to run for 100 yards because I don't expect that to happen, especially on this defense. This is not the defense to get right against. Whether it's Fuller, Attaway, or it's Faison, I'm telling you, you need to average over 3 yards a carry, which doesn't feel like it should be a huge ask. But if you can get 15 carries for 60 yards, catch a couple passes out of the backfield for some key first downs, and get around 80 to 100 yards of offense and a touchdown, that's massive in what you're opening up for the rest of the offense. Mike Shula, please don't hurt me. Please just figure it out. It's my final plea. All right, that is all for today's episode. We'll get this up. It'll be around lunchtime for you guys on Thursday. I appreciate you guys listening. We'll have 2 more shows at the end of the week. For tomorrow, we'll have a crossover show with Matt Moscona at Locked on LSU, my other boss, so T's and P's. And then we'll also have a show with Mike Bratton that we do every Friday. We'll record that early tomorrow morning. We might even just do it live, to be honest. But we'll see. Anyway, appreciate you guys listening. I hope all of you have a great rest of your Thursday. And until next time, go Cox. That was a good one. That was fun.